Jeff Klein.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I usually very intentionally start these reports with the situation in Gaza and the West Bank because that's where our focus should be. But unusually today, there are two victories to celebrate, and I wanted to highlight those. We all know that the Antisemitism Awareness Act, which passed the House last year and is up in the Senate now, has its main intention to stifle criticism of Israel by adopting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. But in the committee markups today, the Democrats, very unusually, kept together unanimously with one or two Republicans, surprisingly, to pass four amendments to the bill that would protect the right to criticize Israel, to sympathize with Gaza, and to have free speech in the United States on the question of Israel and Palestine. And previously, the Republican leadership had only intended to have one amendment to the bill, which was to protect the Republicans' right-wing right to consider the Jews to be Christ killers, because some of them voted against the bill in the House on that basis. But he was surprised that the Democrats stuck together with sometimes some of the amendments with Rand Paul, who evidently sincerely believes in civil liberties and free speech, and some with Susan Collins. Three of them were submitted by Bernie Sanders and one by Ed Markey, our own Ed Markey. So that's a real victory. The Republicans do not know what to do because if it comes to the House now, it has to include those amendments that were already passed. So that's a victory, maybe a temporary victory, but it's something to celebrate. And the other smaller victory, but in our region, is that one of the Columbia students who had been arrested and slated for deportation, Mohsen Mahdawi, has been released from ICE imprisonment at the order of a judge, a Vermont judge. So those are two rare things to celebrate about amid all the horror that's going on. And of course, the horror in Gaza continues. Israel's siege and blockage of food and medical supplies is now about 2 months old, or more than 2 months. And whatever stockpiles of food and fuel that remain in Gaza are now nearly exhausted. Many of the emergency kitchens have been closed. The bakeries have all closed. And people are facing the prospect of certainly malnutrition. That's already happening, but outright starvation. By the way, there's some reports in the Israeli press that Israel intends to loosen the blockade sometime within a week or two. And I guess this is a strategy to have Gaza use up whatever remaining stockpiles it has and therefore be more vulnerable to Israeli cutoffs of aid in the future. The Hamas has made a proposal for a 5-year truce in return and to release all the prisoners. Israel has refused. And the case of allowing or Israel's forbidding entry of humanitarian supplies into Gaza is now another case before the International Court of Justice, supported evidently by 40 countries. I don't have a list of them, but Ireland, Bolivia, Brazil, and Russia and Indonesia are among them. And the only two testimonies in favor of defending Israel's actions are the United States and Hungary. No surprise there. Unfortunately, the process of the ICJ making a decision may take quite a while. And of course, they don't have the ability to enforce a decision. That has to go to the UN and the Security Council, where the US will likely block it. Incidentally, you may have noticed a couple of days ago, Israel celebrated one of a series of holidays that commemorate the Holocaust and Israeli fallen soldiers leading up to the celebration of Independence Day for Israel, which, by the way, in our calendar is May 14th or 15th, depending on how you count it, because Israel celebrates its even secular holidays according to the Jewish religious calendar. The dates they mark it move around according to our calendar. But it's no small irony that Holocaust Memorial Day coincides with the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943. And in fact, the closest historical analog to what's going on in Gaza now is the Warsaw Ghetto, with, in this case, the Palestinians playing the part of the Jews and the Israelis playing the part of the Nazis in liquidating the Warsaw Ghetto. And by the way, pointing that out makes me a Jew hater and an anti-Semite, according to the definition that has been adopted by many states and is on and the House of Representatives and Harvard University, by the way. And just as a parenthesis, we use this term anti-Semitism all the time. People should be aware that that's a pseudoscientific, racist term that was invented in Germany in the 19th century, but has become widespread. And of course, Semite is not a race or a religion; it's a language family, and shared by some Jews, Arabs, Druze, Christians, and so on. So it's sort of pointless to sort of attack the idea of anti-Semitism as including hostility against Arabs and Jews. It was invented as a term to symbolize persecution of Jews only. The West Bank, the settler and army attacks on rural communities especially continues. And I highly recommend, there's a BBC documentary called The Settlers, which was briefly available on YouTube, but now can be seen on Twitter. And I'll, if I think of it, I'll put the link in that. It's very telling, and mostly is the testimony of Israelis themselves by a very mild-mannered British reporter. It's worth watching. The most dangerous situation is Iran right now, where the U.S. is both negotiating and threatening to attack Iran. Basically, although they trashed the agreement that the Obama administration had negotiated to limit Iran's nuclear program, the only conceivable successful negotiations will be something along those lines, which Trump was convinced by Israel and its supporters to jettison when he got into office the first time. Israel's aim is not a better agreement. It's to have no agreement and the option of a military attack on Iran only. The parameters that they are supposedly supporting, everybody understands, are completely unacceptable to Iran and deny it its rights under the Non-Proliferation Treaty for the peaceful use of atomic energy. In Lebanon, Israel continues to violate the ceasefire. They bombed Beirut last week for the first time in a while. They continue to occupy some Lebanese territory. In Syria, Israel also occupies an increasing amount of the southern part of the country, and their officials have been openly stating that their goal is the destruction and partition of the Syrian state. With the help of various ethnic groups, the Kurds, and the United States occupation of eastern Syria, that's their aim, and it's not that far-fetched. Finally, in Yemen, the U.S. continues its bombing campaign and has killed many people bombing the port of Yemen, but the Yemenis continue to strike back. And last week, they launched an attack on one of the U.S. Nuclear aircraft carriers in the region, the Harry S. Truman, and one of the missiles came close to hitting the ship, which had to engage in, elaborate evasive maneuvers, which involved dropping an F-18 fighter bomber off the side of the ship accidentally. Those bombers, that's the second one lost in this campaign. They cost $67 million apiece. And the total cost of the U.S. attacks on Yemen, the expenditure of missiles and so on, is probably $1 billion already. Finally, the Pope died, and in many ways, he was a supporter of humanitarian rights for the Palestinians, and this earned him the ire of the Israelis, who basically snubbed the commemoration of his death and funeral, and have been attacking him in social media. So that's it. By the way, just on the issue of that comparison of the Israelis to the Nazis, we need to bear in mind that victimhood is not permanent, and that a victim at one time can be a victimizer at another time. And we have an example from our own history. The Puritans that we celebrate landing at Plymouth Rock were genuinely persecuted on religious grounds in England and fled for their religious freedom. And then, of course, carried out a genocide against the native people that lived in New England then. So sometimes a victimizer can become a victim, and a victim can become a victimizer, and that's certainly the case in Israel. We don't deny the horror of the Holocaust, but it makes it even more horrific to see that the Israelis are responding toward the Palestinians in many ways like the Nazis behaved toward the Jews in Europe. So sorry, that's my personal comment. So that's it. Sorry, it's a lot, but that's it for now.
Thanks, Jeff. Comments and questions? Serena.
Yes. So I wanted to ask you about the fires that are going all over Europe and Israel. And now they're asking for help from certain countries. And I think Greece and Cyprus and Italy stepped up. But I think then now Greece backed out, is what I heard. Do you know anything on that?
No, except that, there have been many fires in Israel. And part of the reason for that is the Israeli settlement and land policy of planting very flammable trees, supposedly to forest the hillsides. And when a fire breaks out, the pine and eucalyptus trees, which are not native to Palestine, catch fire and spread pretty disastrously. So part of the, and I'm not a religious person, but some people can see this as God's reprimand to the Zionists, because apparently it's only in Jewish settler areas that the fires are burning, and not in the Palestinian areas, which are not forested in the same way as the Israeli territory.
Okay. Noble.
Jeff, there were some reports, I don't know how credible they were, that France and Turkey were talking about bringing supplies in, I guess, in defiance of the blockade or the embargo. I don't know if you've heard about that or what you think about that.
I haven't heard about it. I hope it's true. It certainly is one of the real shames of this situation, that especially the Arab and Muslim countries are not doing more to break the blockade and feed the starving people in Gaza. That's a real shame on them.
I think their hands are tied, but isn't it like the U.S.?
Yeah, well, I mean, their leaders are not accountable to their people by and large, and are dependent on U.S. security guarantees or trade, or have normalized with Israel. But just on the human level, you would think they would feel compelled to do something, but that's not the world we live in, unfortunately.
Susan.
I just wanted to add that thanks to the very adroit amendments to the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act that Jeff mentioned, the bill was not actually voted on in the Senate committee. So it's still stuck in the Senate. And it may not even get out of committee because the amendments that were approved make the entire enterprise a lot less palatable to the Trump administration. I thought the amendments were just going to be vague statements about First Amendment rights, but they are not. They're very specific, and they would definitely limit the use of that as a tool by the Trump administration. So it's possible that we will not see that act come to pass.
Yeah, by the way, the bill that passed in the House last year got the majority of both Republicans and Democrats to vote for it. And the Republican dissenters were those who thought it infringed their religious right to blame the Jews for the crucifixion of Christ. And most of the Democrats voted for it. In Massachusetts, only Presley, McGovern, and Auchincloss voted against it. All the other Dems voted for it. And God knows what is in Auchincloss's brain, but Presley and McGovern were.
Says he's for free speech. But, there hadn't been the same level of mobilization at that time. And the other thing I would just comment is that Bernie is the ranking on this committee, and he was able to use his position to make sure his amendments got a good hearing, got voted on. So sometimes leadership matters. Apparently, all the Democrats voted voted yes on all the amendments. So, the whole turn of events has crystallized something here.
Yeah, so
circulated an article earlier, and several of us did the same article from the Jewish Insider that really gives the blow by blow details of it. It's worth reading. It's quite
so
stunning.
all the Democrats voted for the amendments, which limit the power of the bill itself. And it seems as if this is an example of Trump actually overreaching to the extent that he's turned some of his otherwise likely supporters off.
Well, the only one, the let's call them the moderate Democrats or whatever they are, they decided to vote for these amendments, and even Ron Paul did. And Paul, sorry.
And Susan Collins of Maine voted for two of them, I think.
Right.
Paul. And Paul, you wanted to bring up the starvation issue. This might be a good time to do that. It's up to you.
Yeah, I do. We got, but first of all, Medea Benjamin says that the committee has actually dissolved and they've pretty much given up on trying to get that definition of anti-Semitism through. So if it turns out to be true, that would be really something.
Well, it's a standing committee. I think what it is that the committee, the Republican chair griped that his members did not come back in time to reconvene and take a vote on the bill itself. So, they're in disarray, but they can keep trying to figure out another way.
You seem to indicate they've given up on this.
Yeah,
it could be. They tried to get the Democrats to extend the time allotted for amendments and debate, and the Democrats unanimously refused. Again, surprisingly and effectively.
Yeah, but on Cole's thing on the starvation, the direct action group of this committee has a couple of proposals to make about the need for us to much more directly address the fact that starvation is going to be the main killer of Palestinians over the next